Hello there everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my Blackberry Lavender Cream Puffs. You may have noticed this recipe in one of my recent-ish videos on simple witchcraft, and I saw a couple of you asking in the comments for the recipe, so here you go. It is definitely one of my more involved recipes, but it's very well worth it in the end. It's a crowd favorite so far, and it's certainly something that gets you in the mood for the season. So, without further ado, because this is a more involved recipe, let's dig into what you'll need. As it is rather involved, there are 3 levels to it. First, the Choux Pastry, which is the cream puff pastry, the filling, and then also the lavender syrup. Now, part of the filling I am going to direct you to another video, just because otherwise this video will be way too long, and same goes for the syrup. I have a video that is older that details how to make floral syrups, and I would recommend watching that for how to make that. But I'll explain that when we get to those points. So first, to begin, for the Choux Pastry, you'll need half a cup of cold butter cut into pieces, half a cup of water, half a cup of milk, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and 4 large eggs. Then for the filling, you'll need 2 cups of milk, 4 egg yolks, half a cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of flour, 1/4 cup of cornstarch, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, a pinch of salt, 1/3 cup of butter, plus another 1/3 cup of butter to use later, along with some jam. The amount is a bit unclear as I used the leftover jam, but I would say it's a pretty safe bet to go with anywhere between 1/4 to half a cup of blackberry jam. Now, the blackberry jam is something that I have another video on that goes into more depth on how to make that if you're interested. So I'll link that up above and down below. Then lastly, for the floral drizzle or lavender syrup, I would recommend going and watching my violet syrup recipe. The recipe is very similar, though I would probably recommend using half as many flowers just because lavender is far more potent. But with that said, let's jump into how to make this recipe. First, begin by making the Choux Pastry. The Choux Pastry I use is from Sally's Baking Addiction, which is one of my favorite baking websites, and it's just a fantastic resource for basing recipes or even just going at it and using them. They are very well thought out, very well done, and just beautiful recipes, so I highly recommend it. Typically when I go there to find a recipe, I do mess around with it and tweak it to my liking, but as I am not somebody who is very well versed in cream puffs or choux pastries, it's just something that I like to make every once in a while. I don't know enough to really tweak it, so I typically just go with this one because I know it works, it is delicious, and it's just constantly giving me success. I do tweak a little bit at the end on the baking instructions, but the ingredients are all the same, and most of the instructions. So to begin, combine the butter, water, milk, salt, and sugar together in a medium saucepan. Give it a good stir until the butter's melted and bring it up to a simmer. Once it's simmering, reduce the heat to low and just add all of your flour. Then stir it all together until it is completely incorporated and you'll see the dough is kind of becoming this giant clump. Then remove it from the heat and transfer it to a standard mixer. Then just push it aside and allow it to cool down for a minute. During this time, I crack all of my eggs in a separate bowl and whisk them together. Then slowly add the eggs in 3 to 4 iterations into the cooled down mixture in the standard mixer. Add the eggs until the dough becomes thick and glossy. I had a little bit left over. Save that. Keep that leftover bit because we'll be using it as an egg wash later. So I think I had half an egg left in the end. So once your dough's all perfectly mixed together and you have potentially a little bit of leftover egg, preheat your oven to 400 degrees and line a baking sheet with parchment paper. Then transfer your pastry dough to a piping bag and begin piping out little dough blobs. I made 1.5-inch blobs, though I would probably recommend making them about 2 inches wide and placing them 3 inches apart. Then moisten your finger and tap down those little spikes that they get. Then lightly brush each one with egg wash, and Sally recommended this, and this was a great tip: brush down the parchment paper with water. This way you create a steamy environment while they're baking, and they just rise so beautifully. So highly recommend that. Once they're all prepped and ready to go, it's time to pop them in the oven. Like I said before, this is kind of where I deviate from Sally's recipe just a bit, but the idea is generally the same. Here I pop them in the oven at 400 for 15 minutes. Then, without opening the oven, big important thing, do not open the oven. Lower the temperature to 350 and let them bake for another 15 minutes, or until you can smell that they're done. Then once that time has passed, turn off the oven and crack it open, not all the way, just a crack, for 20 minutes. This way they cool down a little more evenly and slowly, and it prevents them from deflating. Once that time has passed, take them out and with a wet knife, super important, poke the side of each cream puff to allow the steam to escape. Then let them cool completely before filling. Now, typically when I pop them in the oven, this is when I begin making my filling. The filling is actually pretty simple to make. It may be a little complex if you've never baked before, but somebody who is a little more experienced in the kitchen, this is a piece of cake. Begin by pouring the milk into a saucepan on low heat. Then in another bowl, cream together the egg yolks, sugar, flour, and cornstarch, and whisk until smooth. Then add in the vanilla and a pinch of salt. Then here we're going to temper the eggs by pouring in just a little bit of that warmed milk. Make sure while you're pouring the milk into your egg mixture to whisk continuously. Pour in about 1/4 of the mixture and then transfer the egg and milk mixture back into the saucepan. Over a medium heat, whisk continuously until it begins to boil and thicken. Once it's off of the heat, whisk in that 1/3 cup of butter, that first 1/3 cup of butter that is, and then whisk that in until it's combined. Then transfer that into a heat-proof bowl. Then let it cool. Once the cream is cooled to room temperature, this is when you can add in that other 1/3 cup of butter. Typically, if you start making the filling while your cream puffs are baking, by the time the cream puffs are cooled and the cream is cooled, it's about the same. Once the cream puffs are cooled and the filling is cooled, this is when I add in the jam. And that's basically just simply slapping it all together. Then this last part is really very simple. You can make it more beautiful than I did, but all I did was slice the cream puffs in half. I left a little bit of a hinge, and then I spooned in a bit of the filling into each and every one. Then closed them up and drizzled on that lavender syrup. Now, I crafted this recipe for the intent of bringing happiness into people's lives, and I think it does the trick. Blackberries and lavender are known to have happiness-bringing qualities, and I think this was a wonderful way to incorporate them. And as you guys have heard me say way too many times, I like using kitchen witchery for emotional healing or physical healing, especially with Magick. I personally, in my craft, have found it to work exceptionally well, and this recipe is no exception. Of course, it's important to keep a strong intent while working it, and you are welcome to add any more levels of working to it as you so please, such as calling on a deity or creating a sacred space, which is something that I do. But there's also something to be said about just infusing love into your cooking. And that just about wraps it up for everything Blackberry this season. I'm looking forward to next year. There were a couple recipes I didn't quite get to try, such as a blackberry pie, but that rhymed. I didn't intend on that, but it worked. That's something I'll do next year. Alrighty, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to check out my other channel, which is a vlog channel, feel free to go check that out. It will be linked in the description down below. And if you want to help support this channel and that one, I would really appreciate it if you checked out my Patreon. There I share my art and some other fun benefits. Alrighty, I hope you guys are having a lovely day, and I hope to see you soon.